It's a Friday afternoon Bible study here live on webcast1live.com, and you can join us. We're in Mark 7. Did Jesus really fulfill all the food and cleanliness laws in Leviticus? We're talking about that today live on The View from a Pew.
Welcome to The View from a Pew, a conversation among Christians who are out to grow their faith by asking the simple questions, the tough questions, and the stuff you really wish your pastor would talk about. Come on now, let's reason together. It's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so join the conversation. Call 244-0077. That's 244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
Thank you very much. 4 minutes after the hour on this 24th day of July. We really don't need to lay it out like that. You might be listening to this at another time, on another date, on a podcast, or a live best of. Any show that Frank is in is a potential best of.
That's right.
So today we're going to do our Friday Bible study as we like to do. Jim Bear is on his way. Frank Thomas, The Verse. Bob Montserrat, The Cat in the Hat. And I'm J. Michael McCoy. Glad to have you here. This show is called The View from a Pew. We do it every Friday. We do it every day at 2 o'clock. Now, the object of this show is quite simple. Imagine you could raise your hand in the middle of the sermon, and the pastor would say, "Yes, Frank, what? You have a question? What is that?" And then you'd get to ask a question. That's what The View from a Pew is about. Best way to learn, as far as I'm concerned, is to ask the master the questions, or ask the pastor the questions. Today we don't have a pastor, but we have a field of very intelligent people, and we're going to go through Romans 7 all the way 1 to 23. And this was the situation where Jesus and the disciples arrived in a community, and the disciples were sitting eating. And the Pharisees noticed that they did not follow the Jewish ritual of hand washing before eating. Yes.
Mark 7.
What did I say?
Romans.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. Mark 7. Did I really say Romans? Yes. Wow. All right. Thank you. Mark 7. And so the disciples are sitting there eating with their unclean hands, according to the Pharisees. And the Jews, especially the Pharisees, who did not eat until they have poured water over their cupped hands as required by ancient traditions. Similarly, they don't eat any from the market until they immerse their hands in water. This is but one of the many traditions the Jews have clung to, such as their ceremonial washing of cups, pitchers, and kettles. So the Pharisees walked up to Jesus and said, "Why don't your disciples follow the age-old traditions? They eat without first performing the hand-washing ceremony." And I think the operative word there is ceremony. Mm-hmm. The Pharisees were all about ceremony. Jesus replied to them, and see, this is one of those places where you lose me on this peace-loving, long white-robed, long-haired, peace and love Jesus. I mean, I know he is that way. I'm not saying that. But I don't think we give him way enough kudos for getting in their face, especially the Pharisees. Now, Jesus would never do what I did last Saturday, and I'd get in the face of a non-believer. I realized that that's not proper. But in front of a believer, like if I want to get in, well, I never get in Frank's face. But if I'd want to get into Frank's face, that'd be okay because he's kind of a follower. He's he's in one of those fringe cult religions. No, I'm just kidding. So here comes Jesus. Now, what could Jesus have said at that point? "Oh, Mr. Pharisees, Mr. Rabbi, I'm so sorry that we've offended you. Boys, quick, over to the water fountain. Let's properly wash our hands with the ceremonial hand-washing tradition." Right? That's one of the things he could have said.
Right.
But he didn't. He could have said, "Frank, what would you have said if you were Jesus?" Pharisees come up, they start giving you some hoot. There's your men over there. They're eating.
I would have not been so politically correct, but like the woman who was caught in adultery, they were trying to trap Jesus in a trap. In the adultery case, they was either trying to catch him either not upholding Mosaic law, or they was trying to catch him in blasphemy for supposedly forgiveness of sin. So what he simply done was said, "Ye without sin cast the first stone," which that wasn't the answer they expected, and they had to drop their rocks.
Right. But wouldn't put the mic a little closer to you. But wouldn't you
I'm not
call
even
that
near
a
it.
smart aleck answer?
Well,
Ye that are without sin may cast the first stone.
Well, what he was doing is in these parables, he was showing them their hypocrisy and the fact that they claimed they could see light, and the light was Christ standing in front of them, and they rejected that light, and basically they said, "We can see." So he was showing them their hypocrisy by the parable without getting himself killed in the process.
But he was a smart aleck.
If you want to call it that, but he was. Sometimes the truth is biting. Sometimes the truth cuts.
Here's his exact words. Now, remember, you're a rabbi. You're a Pharisee. You are the law. You are perfect in the law. As perfect as you think you can be, you're perfect in the law. And it's your job to tell everybody else how they're not doing enough works and enough to fulfill the law so that God will love them and bring them to salvation.
Like a lot of preachers? Is
Yes.
what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah. So Jesus replied, and these are the red letters, "You hypocrites." Now, I know this is 2015, but I still don't think that's a nice word.
Mac, would you relish the thought of Jesus Christ looking in your eye and saying, "You hypocrite"?
Yeah, but see, they don't know who he is yet.
I know, but I wouldn't want to be standing in their shoes.
No, I wouldn't either. But see, they don't know who he is yet. They keep seeing him do, in the last one, he fed the 5,000, and it was probably more like 15,000 with 3 loaves and 4 fishes and the wine. They're seeing all this stuff happen, but they still don't believe that he is the I am.
Correct. My version here says, well, did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites?
Yeah, it comes on here later. You hypocrites, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you, and he wrote, and this is in 6. So this is Isaiah 29:13. Isaiah said, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Their worship is a farce, for they treat man-made ideas as commands from God." That's big right there.
That is.
They treat man-made ideas as commandments from the law. And then Jesus goes on to say, "For you ignore God's law and substitute your own tradition." See, I just think that's in your face, playground stuff.
Right.
I just don't think that's, "Oh, Mr. Rabbi, I'm so sorry that my apostles have broken your ceremonial hand-washing tradition, and we'll get into a holy huddle, and we'll get back with you."
Well, see, the other thing to consider is they even admit that it's a tradition. It's not law. It's tradition.
Right.
And they expect everybody to follow the tradition. So what traditions do we have today that we follow? I'm just saying.
What traditions do we have today that we follow?
Yeah, what's man's traditions that we're doing today?
You mean in the church?
In a church. Right.
That's a good question. Bob Montserrat, Frank, the verse Thomas is here. Jim Baer just came in. Jim, how are you this afternoon?
Thanks.
You know where we're at. We're on Mark 7.
Right.
And we're trying to figure out, did Jesus fulfill the Levitical laws of hand washing, mixing fabrics together, that whole 9 yards?
Okay.
All right. Now, what was your question?
What are the traditions of man that we follow today?
All right. So, do you think the few words that we say before communion, on the night before he was crucified, Jesus lifted up bread and said, "This is my body. Take it and I'm sorry, I don't know the exact words, but eat it and think of me.
Yeah.
And here's the blood."
Right.
All right,
Sure.
is that a
That's
tradition?
a tradition, sure.
But Jesus said that.
Right, but it's something that man does and does it repeatedly over and
Okay.
over, and it's passed down.
Okay.
Is there a law to say that when you take communion, you have to say that kind of thing?
No.
You have to quote that
Well,
scripture?
I don't know. I don't know. Did Jesus say?
He said, you do this in remembrance of me
Okay.
when you partake and break bread and that. So what else is a tradition? Worship music, worship band in the beginning of the service. Everybody does that. And
yeah,
then
I
you
suppose.
take you take an offering at a certain time, and then you have announcements.
Yeah.
Or, I'm just saying those are traditions.
Yeah, but boy, those are pretty close to Jesus and the foot of the cross, wouldn't you say?
Well,
I mean,
he's-
holding up bread and wine before you do communion and saying we do this in remembrance of you, man, that's pretty theological there. There's not a lot of man's law in there.
Well,
No.
what Christ was saying is if you don't partake of my sacrifice of the blood, there's no salvation, there's no redemption in you, basically.
well, yeah, I'm not saying you don't take communion. I'm just saying that there are some places that say you have to do it a certain way.
So if the
It's a
pastor
man-
got up, and held up the bread and held up the wine and said over the cheeks and through the gums, look out, stomach, here it comes, that be okay?
Well, I don't think that's the reverence you're looking for. That's not obviously, and some people think you can, have, something else other than bread and wine, and they want to say that there are other symbols that can represent that. But I think what's really important is the heart behind what Jesus is talking about here. And so I just think we have to be very reverent and very humble in taking communion, respecting water baptism, but they are outward signs of a spiritual renewal in the heart of man.
And you're right, but do all men take it that way? And I think that's the point that they're making here. People honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. So what I'm saying is, do people actually really believe what
Yeah.
they're doing?
It's a good point.
Is it just a tradition? Is it just a
Exactly.
habit? Is it just something that we do? And
Well,
it
also-
has very little meaning.
Well, Paul talks about it in Corinthians too, and he says, be very careful how you take those sacraments because many people are sick because they were disrespectful in taking those in a irreverent manner. They were just casual. Maybe they didn't eat all day and they were waiting for a feast at church, and that's where they were going to get their food.
Right.
That's not the point. This is an amazing covenant gift that God has given to us. And so even Martin Luther, the first time he served communion, and I don't know if you know the story, but it's an amazing story, where his dad, who was against him and, wanted him to be a lawyer, and so he had his dad in the audience, and all the people were waiting before him to serve this covenant, this tradition of communion, and he actually spilled the wine, and,
really?
and it was he just froze in his holding these elements because he really believed that he was holding the body and the blood of Christ. It's very
But that was from his training in the Catholic Church.
right. That's true. Yeah,
that-
but still, I think, gosh, it would be refreshing for us to have at least a little bit of that sensitivity of what we're really doing here in taking communion. So,
All right, let's take our first break here. Let's go to the Facebook for just a second. Jill says that the Pharisees were taking a detour to try to get to Jesus and bug him, and Jesus just stood there right in front of him and took it and wouldn't let him do that. Chris John says, for what it's worth for the conversation, one of the things that set the Pharisees aside from other Jewish traditions was their belief that the oral law was handed down at the same time as the written law was to Moses, and that the oral law was just as binding. So that was
Yeah,
something
that's what they believed.
they believed. Yeah. All right. All right. Let's take our first break. When we come back, we'll get more into what Jesus says to the Pharisees and does he fulfill Levitical law? Is it okay to eat pork? Is it okay to eat shellfish? Is it okay to do all those things? Did Jesus fulfill that? We'll find out later. From your mouth to your ears, right here on The Truth.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
21 minutes after the hour on this gorgeous day here in Central Iowa. If you're watching this live, we thank you. You're on 99.3 The Truth. And if you're watching this on a podcast, then you're on webcastonelive.com. And we are 2 companies operating under the same roof in the same suite of offices. See, you haven't been here yet, Jim, but I've proclaimed this is the penthouse.
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, we're on the top floor.
It's beautiful.
Right?
It's fantastic.
And so when you're on the top floor, that's considered the penthouse. And the only thing above us is God. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is God's penthouse right here.
It's wonderful.
And the other thing, do you know what sat on this? You know what the only other structure that ever sat on this ground to record?
I might know something way back in history.
Way back in history.
My grandfather told me about something years ago that this was a monastery.
Correct.
Years ago, right?
Years ago. This was one of the first big monasteries west of the Mississippi.
Wow.
Now, if you think about traveling, by stagecoach or wagon train or something, this was probably, a day from the Mississippi River?
Really?
And this position, Worrell Hay Mall, is one of the top topographical above sea level sites in Iowa.
Wow.
So it was very high,
Yeah.
and they could see it for miles.
That is really interesting.
And they would travel. And obviously, we have the two rivers here, so there was plenty of water and things like that and good farm ground.
Yeah.
But there is no record of anything ever standing on this ground prior to the monastery.
That is really neat.
So God is here again.
Praise God.
All right. So we're talking about Mark 7. And this is the place where Jesus calls out the Pharisees call out Jesus because his disciples have not done the traditional hand-washing ceremony before eating their food. And the Pharisees are trying to hijack Jesus any way they can get him because they want to kill him. They're just convinced he's the line of David. They're convinced he's going to take over the Roman Empire, and they're going to smash him. Now, little did they know the empire that he would take over would be far greater than any Roman empire, and it would last to eternity. But the Pharisees didn't know that.
Right.
He's called them hypocrites. He quoted Isaiah when he said, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Their worship is a farce, for they teach man-made ideas as commandments from God." Man-made laws as commandments from God. All right, so then I'm going to move on. Frank, are you with me over here?
Yes.
What are you doing?
I am reading on
Okay.
Bob's computer.
Are you reading Levitical law?
We're reading Acts 10 right now.
Okay.
So what verse are you on there, Mac?
I'm going to start with 9.
Okay.
Then Jesus said, "You skillfully sidestepped God's law in order to hold on to your own tradition."
Exclamation point, right?
Yep. "For instance, Moses gave you this law from God. Honor your father and mother. And anyone who speaks disrespectfully of father or mother must be put to death. But you say it is all right for people to say to their parents, 'Sorry, I can't help you. For I have vowed to give to God what I would have given to you.' In this way, you let them disregard their needy parents." 13 now. "And so you cancel the word of God in order to hand down your own traditions. And this is only one example among many."
Wow.
He's telling the Pharisees these things. And what he's 30 years old, you know?
Right.
I know they've called him rabbi, but he certainly never took a high teaching place like a Pharisee.
But this is really amazing what he's really talking about here.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Pharisees were trying to justify that it's better to give their money to this religious organization, whatever they were, right? And ignore the physical needs of their own parents.
In this case, parents.
Right. And I mean, can you imagine, like for today, if, you got parents who are really destitute and they've raised you and you ignore them to tell them, "I'm sorry, I can't help you because I need to give my money to this religious organization."
Yeah.
That's hypocrisy, and that's what Jesus was really trying to expose.
All right. Bob, anything there you got?
On what you were reading there,
No, not necessarily. I'm going to move on here.
But that's one of the 10 Commandments too. Honor your father and your mother.
Right.
That is.
oh yeah, and I was just going to say that Jesus was a Pharisee. You know that?
He was a Pharisee?
Sure. You had Pharisees and Sadducees.
I don't think. What are you saying there?
That's how he was trained.
Well,
So he knew their traditions and the laws.
Right, but I'm not sure he acted as a Pharisee as we think about
No.
it. He never went around and judged religious people.
No, I'm just saying that's
Okay.
where he came from
Okay.
in his training.
All right. Then Jesus called out to the crowd and said, I'm on Mark 7:14. "All of you listen and try to understand. It's not what goes into your body that defiles you. You are defiled by what comes from your heart." Huge. Huge. Right there. Did he, right there, fulfill the law, the Levitical law, on food preparation, hand washing, ceremonies, etc.? Did he right then and there fulfill that law?
No.
Why?
Well, because I think you're taking out of context what he's saying. All that he's saying, here's what I'm saying. If you put garbage in your body, what do you expect to come out of your body? An out-of-tune piano can only play out-of-tune music. So if you put garbage in, garbage comes out. So clearly, I don't think he is eliminating
dietary health principles arbitrarily here.
Well, later on in 18, Jesus said, don't you understand? Can't you see that the food you put into your body cannot defile you? Food doesn't go into your heart, but only passes through your stomach and then goes into the sewer. By saying this, he declared that every kind of food is acceptable in God's eyes. And then Jesus added, and we're on 20, it is what comes from inside that defiles you. For from within, out of a person's heart comes evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, wickedness, deceit, lustful desires, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All these are vile things that come from within. They are what defile you.
You know, Paul talks about physical exercise, and that's good to some degree to, really take care of your physical body. It's our temple. It's what we are to do, obviously. But at the same time, what Jesus is really trying to emphasize is that spiritual kingdom, that spiritual teaching that obviously is saying nothing material outside the body is really what makes the person unclean before God. It's really this fallen heart that all people are brought into this world with, that heart of stone Ezekiel talks about, that nobody can do anything about apart from God doing a miracle of grace, removing that heart of stone, giving that person a heart of flesh. In Ezekiel talks about that.
When we get to heaven, do you think we'll eat meat?
I don't know.
I haven't really thought about it. I mean, I just think there is going to be a feast. There's going to be celebration. There's going to be a lot of the pleasures of this world, but there's such a beyond a beautiful sunset or whatever it might be. It's going to be whatever it is, as good as it is right now, it's going to be that much more enhanced.
Well, wouldn't eating flesh include the killing of animals?
So I really don't know how to answer your question. I'm not answering your question on that.
But I know where you're going, Frank, and this is why some people question your religion, Seventh-day Adventists, because you guys don't really listen to Jesus all the time.
Well,
I mean, Jesus is saying right here, by saying this, Jesus declares that every kind of food is acceptable in God's eyes. Now, then you don't understand either, Jesus said. Can't you see that the food you put in your body cannot defile you? Food doesn't go into your heart, but only passes through the stomach and then goes into the sewer.
Let me ask you
it's
a question.
It's what comes from inside that defiles you.
Let me ask you guys a question. Christ was tempted in the wilderness, correct? Mm-hmm. What was that first temptation?
Was it physical hunger? Man shall not live on bread alone, but every word that proceeds out the mouth of God.
What was the first temptation to Eve in the Garden of Eden?
To not eat from the tree of good and evil.
Do you think it's coincidence that the first temptation to perfect created man and the first temptation in the wilderness to Christ was on a point of appetite? Because my contention is that Satan controls you by what you put in your stomach. What you put in your stomach, he captures control of the mind, and when he's got control of the stomach and the mind, the morals will follow.
Well,
no, that's religion. I'm sorry, Frank, that's religion. Jesus clearly said that's not the case. Jesus clearly said, don't you understand? Can't you see that the food you're putting in the body cannot defile you? And food doesn't go in your heart, but only passes through the stomach and then goes to the sewer.
And it's really not about food.
Right.
I mean, there are people that have terrible diets and they live to be 100 years old and smoke, and, we don't understand. There are medical reports that say smoking is not good. There are some foods that are not good. But he is not talking about what to eat and what not to eat materially here. This is about spiritual relationship to God, and it's not outside your tradition. You're saying what to eat or not to eat or whatever. It's not outside the body. It's a transformation that you need. As Jesus said to Nicodemus, you need to be born from above. You need a new heart.
We're talking salvation and health.
Right.
I'm not talking about what you eat is going to affect your salvation, but what you eat is going to affect your health. Predominantly, all the cancer that we have as human beings comes from one source: flesh eating. There was no flesh eating allowed prior to the flood. After the flood, God said you can eat, but he laid out certain things that you could eat. Animals that chewed the cud with a split hoof. He offered things that you could eat, and he offered things that you should abstain from. The Jews were taught to abstain from pork because swine does not have the complex set of stomachs that cows have. They don't digest their food the way cows do. And I look at it this way. If an animal eats a cancerous, tumorous, dead carcass, and you in turn eat that, you're getting your cancer secondhand. So what Christ is saying is a cow is eating grasses and grains and things. You eat that. That's the better form of animals if you're going to choose to eat animal flesh at all.
But my concern here, Frank, is like just what you're saying about, I think we're getting off the subject of what Jesus was talking about. This is just one example. And I mean, I think you can go to the book of Acts and remember when we were talking about the sheet that had the animals that were brought down before him in a dream, and God said, "You can eat," and that.
No, what you know? I think you're misinterpreting that, because what Christ was telling the disciples is I'm going to send you out to give the gospel to Gentiles.
Right, all people.
Samaritans were considered by the Jews less than dogs. Anybody else, any other person could, through some ritual, become a Jew, except a Samaritan. A Samaritan was a dog. So Christ was going to send these disciples out to the Gentile to give his message, and these men were fascist, elitist, racist individuals. And he had to take that out of them before he sent them out.
All right, we're on a break. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we can pick this up. I don't know why we're getting stuck on this. It's 1,000 foot from the cross. It has nothing to do with salvation. But Frank makes a good point. These are man's traditions. Yeah. These are, even though Jesus says something different, Frank goes with tradition. We'll talk about that when we come back, live on The Truth.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed, fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
if you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
Little rabbit foo-foo jumping through the forest. Scoop him up, pop him on the head, Frank. 22 minutes before the top of the hour, Salem Radio Network News. And then the Steve Deace live in Afternoon Drive. All right, Frank, let's run down Little Rabbit Foo-Foo's rabbit
it's
trail.
It's not a rabbit trail.
Because Jesus said you can eat anything you want.
Well, Jim is saying that Acts and the vision to Peter about not calling anything common or unclean says that you can eat what you want. But if you go on and you read Acts 10:27-29, Peter says, it says, while talking with him, Peter went inside and found a large gathering of people. He said to them, you are well aware that it is against our law for a Jew to associate or visit a Gentile, but God has shown me that I should not call anyone impure or unclean. So when I was sent for, I came without raising any objection. May I ask who sent for you? Then it goes on in 34 and said, then Peter began to speak. I now realize how true it is that God does not show favoritism, but accepts from every nation the one who fears him and goes and does what is right. So I guess that blows election out of the water. So basically that tells me that Christ is not throwing away dietary principle.
I don't care what it tells you. What did Jesus say?
Well, he said in verse 12 of Acts 10, let's see, it contained, Peter saw heaven opened and something like a large sheet being let down to earth by its four corners. It contained all kinds of four-footed animals as well as reptiles and birds. Then a voice told him, get up, Peter, kill and eat. Surely not, Lord, Peter replied. I have never eaten anything impure or unclean. The voice spoke to him a second time, do not call anything impure that God has made clean. So.
All right, so Jesus makes everything clean. So then he makes it clear that what comes from the inside, it is what come. This is in 20. Then Jesus added, it is what comes from the inside that defiles you. For from within, out of a person's heart comes evil thoughts, and they goes through the whole list. All these vile things come from within. They are not what defile you. So, did Jesus come to fulfill the Leviticus laws? Jim, you say yes.
Well, he came to fulfill the law or whatever we were commanded to do and we cannot do.
Right.
Jesus filled it on our behalf.
Right.
So he has not only died for our transgressions, but he has also lived the perfect life of total obedience that we could not live.
Right. And because he lived a perfect life, he could sacrifice his life for ours.
Right.
Okay. Bob, you agree with that? Did Jesus come to fulfill Levitical law?
Well, he even read scripture in the synagogue. If you remember, he picked up the book of Isaiah, and he said he has fulfilled the law and what Isaiah prophesied.
And Isaiah prophesied that these people honor me with their lips only, but their hearts are far from me. Their worship is a farce.
Well, that's more.
Where they teach man-made ideas as commands from God.
Yeah, and there's more that Isaiah prophesied too. And Jesus said he fulfilled the law. The Old Testament or the Old Covenant pointed to Jesus, toward the Messiah.
The verse is not asserting that your diet, your salvation hinges on your diet. What the verse is asserting is there's dietary principles that were given to the Jews that are applicable then and they're applicable now, because what you put in your body you're going to get the result in your health.
Okay, so what do you say the fact that Jesus says that's wrong?
It's not wrong.
Well, but Jesus says, don't you understand? Can't you see that the
We're
food you put
talking
in your
salvation.
body cannot defile you?
We're talking salvation.
Maybe he is too.
That's what's it's being referred to there is salvation. I'm talking two separate things. I'm talking your personal health. If you smoke for 40 years, you may go to heaven, but you're going to suffer with cancer somewhere along this earth if you live long enough.
Okay. This is where you lose me, Frank. This is where I call you pharisaical because you're stuck on this. Jesus says don't worry about it, but Frank says, no, I'm going to worry about it. I need to worry about this because I've got a verse here.
He's saying don't worry about it as pertains to your salvation, not your personal health. If you wanna go around suffering because of diseases from what you eat and what you smoke and what you drink, that's your free choice to do so. He's not saying that's going to keep you out of heaven. But what I'm saying is there's health principles that if you adhere to them, you're going to be a healthier person while you're living for Christ.
Yeah, and I think that relates to and what Paul talks about in Corinthians in reference to taking the sacraments. If people are lax or not reverent about taking the sacraments, many have fallen asleep. That means they weren't lost necessarily, but they have fallen asleep, that it was destructive to their physical health eventually.
Right, and falling asleep meaning that
yeah,
they
so
died.
I mean, a lack of taking care of the physical body can shorten your life. I mean, honor your father and mother. You know, if you want a long life, the Bible says.
We all grew up.
So.
We all grew up in the Mickey Mantle era. How many home runs would Mickey Mantle have hit had he kept a little bit better care of his body physically? He himself admits that he cut his own career short by his drinking, smoking, and carousing.
Okay, so is God sovereign over your life or not? Are you telling me you can live longer than God expected you to live, that you can live longer than God had planned for you to live?
All right.
This is your birthday. This is your death. You're going to tell me you're going to change that.
Do you believe that your day, the day you die, is the day you're going to die no matter what you do?
If it's God's plan, I'll die when it's God's will.
Psalm 139 says our days are numbered.
So if you smoke my dad smoked for 40 years and he died at 61 years old.
That's exactly when God wanted him to go.
Are you telling me
Yes.
that had he not smoked for 40 years, he would have died that same exact day?
That's if you believe in God's sovereignty. How else can you say this? I mean, how else can you say this? Do you really think God anticipated that we would be able to build a robot, a bionic man?
We were meant to live forever in the Garden of Eden.
Right.
It was through transgression of God's laws that set into motion death to start with.
Right.
They had to partake of the tree of life to continue living that life eternal.
Frank, I got you.
And there
Is
was
God
no
sovereign or not?
and there was no meat in the diet.
So you're telling me that you control how long you live, not God?
I'm not telling you that
that's
ultimately
what
I
you're
can
saying.
control how long I live, but I can have a better quality of life if I adhere to better health principles. If I don't have cholesterol, if I don't have high blood sugar, I'm naturally going to live longer than if I have those things.
It's like living with Jack LaLanne. You know, I want to put on my yoga pants and get up and start to do jumping jacks. Okay, kids, let's do jumping jacks this morning.
It really isn't about the length of our life.
No.
It's really about the glory of God and the purpose of God for our lives.
I simply don't believe that I will live one moment past God intended me to live.
Absolutely.
And do I not take care of my body? Well, I don't do very well. I admit it.
Yeah.
Now I've lost 11 pounds, so I weigh I weigh under 250.
Yeah.
And I should weigh about 190.
Well.
But 190, I would die.
Well, Mac, you have an appointment written in heaven right now, and you're supposed to keep that, and you're not going to miss that appointment.
Absolutely not.
When he wants you there, you'll be there.
Yep. Why are people miraculously healed?
Right.
He wanted you around longer.
Yeah.
Maybe Frankie smoked cigarettes, and so that hurt him. But if God wants you around longer, he's going to keep you around. And I know the fitness centers are going to hate that, but I just don't think it makes any difference.
You're right. The focus is not on you. It's on the glory of God and his purpose, his plan. Everything is to his glory.
Right.
Do you believe smoking cigarettes is in Christ's plan?
I think
He
it's
didn't
not.
say anything about it.
Yeah, it's not written in the Bible, and it's really a liberty of conscience, I believe. It's really,
How about
I think-
Chick-fil-A? You think it's okay that God lets you eat Chick-fil-A, Frank? It's breaded.
You know, you can find medical
Flesh.
reports to tell you that it's not good for you, but at the same
God
time,
designed us not to eat any flesh in the beginning.
but I think
Hold on. We're out of time.
All right.
Going to a break. Coming back live here on The Truth with the verse and the pharisaical laws that he knows everything about.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do.